Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is after 6:30 on September 20th, 2021. We're going to call to order the first Advisory Committee for Redistricting meeting, and we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business for us today is to welcome our mayor, Jerry Demings, to give us some remarks. Mayor.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the first public meeting of the Orange County Advisory Committee for Redistricting. I want to thank each of you for volunteering your time over the next several months for the important task that is ahead of you. As you know, every 10 years, Orange County households participate in the U.S. decennial census. The results determine congressional representation, adjustment of commission district boundaries based on population, and federal funding for programs such as early childhood education and Head Start, free and reduced school meal programs at Orange County Public Schools, and emergency management and response funding. The 2020 U.S. decennial census began in early 2020. I would like to acknowledge the Orange County Volunteer Complete Count Committee, who worked with the U.S. Census Bureau and community stakeholders to ensure Orange County had an accurate and complete count. Based on the 2020 census data, Orange County's population increased from 1.15 million in 2010 to 1.43 million in 2020, which is a 25% increase in population. Orange County is now the 6th largest county in Florida for growth. We know with growth often comes challenges, one of which is trying to figure out how to redraw the county commission boundaries so that we can equalize the population and continue to represent everyone. The recommended work has to be submitted to the Orange County Board of County Commission by January the 14th, 2022. This information will be used for the 2022 local elections. Redistricting is not just about lines and boundaries, it is about people. And this is where we need your participation, you, the public. The Advisory Committee for Redistricting needs to hear from you about what you think your community should look like and how the lines should be drawn. This is not an easy process, but it is important that we keep the lines of communication open and work collaboratively for the good of all residents. To ensure our residents are informed and engaged, we have multiple ways to participate in the redistricting process. I would encourage everyone to go to ocfl.net/redistricting. On the county's webpage, you will find a list of advisory committee meetings, information on resident participation in person, and how to watch live from home. You will also find information on how to submit public comment electronically. You will have access to a public-facing tool that analyzes data and creates maps to adjust commission boundaries, and you will also find frequently asked questions there. The Advisory Committee for Redistricting public meetings will be broadcast on Orange TV and on social media. Residents can also send an email to Orange County's 2020 redistricting staff at redistricting@ocfl.net, or you may call a special line 407-836-5606, 407-836-5606. And now with that, let me just say thank you for those who have decided to attend the meeting tonight. Let me just say thank you also to those who are volunteering. Perhaps when you decided to volunteer, you had no idea how much work you were going to do, but we appreciate the work and the commitment that you have made. And so tonight, we're going to turn it over to our co-chairs for the remainder of the meeting. Again, thank you for your service and thank you for attending.
Thank you, Mayor Demings. I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tico Perez, and that was Camille, who didn't introduce herself. Camille Evans. We are your co-chairs, and we are going to try to tag team chairing some of these meetings. She'll take pieces. I'll take pieces. When we go through the rules of procedure later on this evening, you'll see some things will require co-chair approval. We have met several times, posted. All of the sunshine's been followed, and we'll be meeting throughout the process in order to facilitate this process, because this is going to indeed be a process as we go through. But before we do anything like that, we think it's time for us just all to introduce ourselves to each other. We're going to be working together. We're going to spend probably 35 to 50 hours together in the next 10 or 11 weeks, so we might as well know each other. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to just go down the list, starting with District 1 Commissioner appointments, District 2, District 3, and just introduce ourselves, tell us just a little bit. This is not a filibuster. This is like a 30-second, this is who I am. And that way perhaps we can start building some relationships as we serve together. So District 1, Ruth Ann Connor King.
I am Ruth Ann. I am a retired IT geek person, presently president of the Hunters Creek Community Association, so staying active in the community locally and expanding a little bit into the county level with this, and looking forward to working with you all.
Wonderful, thank you. Zach Hoover.
Good evening. My name is Zach Hoover. I live in Winter Garden. I'm part of the 25% population growth in Orange County since the last census that the mayor spoke about. My family moved down here from Pennsylvania 3 years ago, and as a staffer for the Pennsylvania State Legislature, I participated in the state legislative redistricting process 10 years ago after the last census. Down here, I work on state and federal government affairs and public policy for Orlando Health, which is a nonprofit hospital system based in Central Florida.
Thanks, Zach. Mayor?
Good evening. My name is Joe Kilsheimer. I have lived in the Orlando area for more than 50 years. My family came here in 1968. I went to Pershing, Conway, and Boone. I went to UCF when it was still called FTU. I remember when Tico was student body president at UCF. Wow. And I spent 20 years as a newspaper reporter for the Orlando Sentinel. I'm today professionally employed, self-employed as a government affairs consultant, and I served 4 years as mayor of Apopka from 2014 to 2018.
Thank you, Mayor. Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Mellon. I live in Ocoee. I'm a structural designer that mainly does airport planning, and I'm also the vice chair for the Ocoee Planning and Zoning Board.
That was brief. Well done, sir.
Short and sweet.
Mark, adios. Mark?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were doing districts. I didn't realize we
No,
were
no.
District 3 already.
Yeah, we're at 3.
My name is Mark Arias. I'm a local attorney. I lived here all my life. Went to Bishop Moore High School, UCF, FSU. It's a pleasure to be a part of this process. Thank you, Commissioner Uribe, for appointing me, and thank you, Mayor Demings. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Tom?
My name is Tom Callan. I'm a lawyer in Orlando. I've been a resident of Orange County since 1989. My parents moved down here in '63. My dad was a Morton guy back in the day. So look forward to being on the committee, and thank you, Commissioner Uribe, for appointing me. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Jimmy?
James Ofan. I moved here in 1977, so I'm not part of the 25%. Sorry. I am an attorney. I practice law here. I do Social Security disability. I've been doing local politics since ever I can remember. I'm the past vice chair of the school board redistricting, and I have created maps and done maps in the past, and I'm considered a geek in this area, so any questions from the public, not from you guys, but from the public, I'm willing to answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Julio?
Buenas noches. My name is Julio Rocha. I'm a local businessman. I love serving my community, especially when they have given to my business. I want to thank Commissioner Gomez Cordero for appointing me, and also Mayor Demings. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thanks, Julio. Wes?
Thank you. My name is Wes Hodge. I serve as the chair of the Orange County Democratic Party. I'm also a resident of District 5, having been appointed by Commissioner Bonilla. I also am a Winter Park High School graduate and looking forward to a nice, fair process for redistricting. Thank you.
Thanks. Kelly?
Sorry. Hello, I'm Kelly Sumrad. I'm a UCF professor as well as the vice chairman for Save Orange County. I'm in District 5, and that's what I'm really looking forward and am excited to serve. Thank you.
Kelly, what do you teach at UCF?
Tourism and hospitality courses.
Awesome. Thank you. Virginia?
Good evening. I'm Virginia Lewis Whittington, Director of Regional Partnerships with MetroPlan Orlando. I am a lifelong resident of Orange County, and I currently live in the Pine Hills, Hiawassee area. Looking forward to serving with you all, and I'd like to also say thank you to Commissioner Siplin and to Mayor Demings and the support of the board for appointing me.
Thanks, Virginia. Commissioner Hardage.
Thank you. I'm former Orange County Commissioner Homer Hardage. I served District 6 for 8 years proudly, and I thank them for electing me twice. I'm glad to be a part of this commission, this board. I'm retired now. My retirement job is as a professional guardian where we take care of the needs of incapacitated seniors and persons with disabilities.
Wonderful. Gary Jones?
Greetings all. I'm the late Gary Jones. It's a privilege to be here. 41 years here in Central Florida, Orange County. I serve as president of Full Sail University. I'm privileged and honored to have been called upon to be a part of this. Mayor Demings, thank you. My fellow folks on the committee here, it's just a privilege to sit with you. I admire each and every one of you.
Thank you, Gary. My co-chair, Camille.
Good evening, everyone. I did not introduce myself earlier. My name is Camille Evans. I have been a resident of Orlando since 2005. I live in the Metro West area. I'm a mother of 3 children and also own my own law firm, Virtus LLP, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. And I'm Tico Perez. I've been here my whole life. I live in Southern Oaks. Myra Uribe is my commissioner. Proud of that. Mayor Demings, thanks for asking us to serve. We will try to do you proud through this process. And I'm looking forward to, I think I know 90% of us, but anyway, I'm looking forward to working together and getting through this process. As I mentioned before, Camille and I have met several times, fully in the sunshine. Everything's been posted. And hopefully we'll continue to do that, but we've established a good working relationship. As I said, we'll talk about some rules and procedures a little bit later in the meeting that we think is going to help facilitate the program and the process. The mayor said our report is due on January 14th. It is our goal to be done before Christmas with our final public meeting so that our staff doesn't need to stress this over Christmas, and neither do we. It's very doable. We've got 11 meetings scheduled, and I think we can get this done. We will be meeting in each of the commission districts after this. So we're meeting here now. I know staff is still looking at the logistics and the timing of where we're going to be and when we're going to be there. Maybe Jason will give us an update at some point tonight as to where and when we'll be in each of the different districts. But we think it's important to get out there, and as did the commission, they did it in the resolution, and listen to our citizens. So we're going to do that, and we'll do that as a group. And it may not be as comfortable as this all the time, but we'll get through it. We'll get through the process. So I'm looking very forward to working with everybody and excited about what we're going to produce as a product. If there's no other introductions, I would like to open the floor to public comment, if we have any.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have 2 public comment cards. I'll ask you to please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes for your comment. The first speaker is Debbie Melly.
Welcome.
I'm Debbie Bailey, 6001 Condor Road, Orla Vista, Florida. We're on the west side of town. We're in an old community that's been there. We were platted in 1921, and we we've come and we've grown, and we've shrunk, and we've grown.
Can you
and we've
start the
got-
clock?
We've had bad crime, we've had good crime, but we've been working to develop our neighborhood. And are very concerned about our neighborhood stays together in one unit, whether you move us to a different district. We've already been split zip codes. We have 2 zip codes. We're a very small neighborhood, but we have 2 zip codes. We have 2 different school zones. But when it comes to having a commissioner, we're very concerned about having the same commissioner for our entire community. And that's the thing that I needed to bring up today, because we're really concerned, a small neighborhood, it's hard to get to work with one commissioner. If we had to work with 2, it would be impossible to get anything done in our neighborhood. So I appreciate your consideration of keeping us together.
Will you repeat the neighborhood again, please?
We're Orla Vista.
Orla Vista? Okay,
We're
perfect.
between Pine Hills Road and Hiawassee
Oh, yeah,
on
no,
the
right.
east and west, and north is Colonial Drive and the south is Carter Road. It's a very small, very old community, but we would like to stay a community together.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments.
Our next speaker is Tanya Hayes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Tanya Hayes. I was not expecting to come up here and speak. I thought you were going to read my public comment card, but that is okay. I am from the vibrant and growing city of Ocoee, and as you can imagine, Ocoee is growing at a rapid rate. So this meeting is super important for us. So I would like to just understand this process and how the redistricting lines work, and to also make sure that the proper funds are being allocated towards Ocoee, especially when it comes to our roads. And car accidents have been a major thing just because we are growing faster than what we can keep up with as far as our traffic goes. So that's kind of been my main concern. I have a 6-year-old son, so just getting around Ocoee has been a lot. So that's just my main public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
That's it.
Any other public comment?
There are no other speaker cards.
Okay. Does anyone wish to submit a speaker card before we move past this point? Okay. Seeing none. Back to Camille.
Thank you, Tico. And thank you for those of you who did take the time to speak. You know, we see a lot of you in the audience, and we really encourage your active participation. So please do not count a robbery to continue to add your voice to this process. One of the very important things that we're going to hear about from Ms. Latour right now is the importance of sunshine and public records law and how it applies to what we do here today. In this modern era where we have added digital capabilities, the understanding how all of this plays out and how to make sure this is a fair and transparent process requires the understanding of everyone here. So I encourage you all to listen. Even if you think you've heard it before, listen again. So Ms. Latour, thank you so much.
Thank you for that introduction. I would like to start off by echoing the mayor's welcome and thanks to you for serving on this committee. You're going to receive a lot of information tonight, and some of it's going to be very specific to redistricting, how the process works, what laws apply to that process. I'm going to kick us off with some more broad discussion on the laws that apply, and these laws apply to how the county functions on a daily basis, how all of the advisory boards must operate. I'm sure you understand the importance of the process. I just ask you to listen to this information and then move forward in compliance with the regulations that I'm going to discuss in order to protect the integrity of the process. And we'll discuss that a little bit more as I move forward. Starting off with the Sunshine Law, it is intended to provide a right of access to governmental proceedings at the state and local level. It is meant to provide a right of access to the public, so the public can hear every discussion and know why every decision was made. And it applies to elected officials, such as the Board of County Commissioners, as well as appointed boards and committees, such as this committee. And the general rule is that all meetings at which official acts are taken or public business is transacted or discussed are public meetings and are required to be open and noticed to the public. The Sunshine Law in this context will apply to any meeting between two committee members, so two redistricting committee members, when you're discussing matters, issues, topics that could foreseeably come before this committee for official action. And when we talk about a meeting, it doesn't have to be a formal meeting where we're sitting here in chambers or in another location for your public hearing where there's Orange TV and an audience. It can be a telephone call, it can be an email, a text message, it can be communication on a social media platform. Any communication with your fellow committee members regarding committee business can only be conducted during a Sunshine Law meeting, a meeting conducted in compliance with the requirements that I'm about to cover. This will include, I think you'll be told later tonight that you're going to receive access to a mapping platform, a mapping software. I think there is a plausible argument to be made that if you are revising maps and posting them, and then you're taking another committee member's map and revising it and posting it, it's plausible that could be interpreted as a communication between committee members. I just caution you when you're using this mapping platform moving forward that you avoid inadvertently communicating with another committee member through reversioning maps. The Sunshine Law is interpreted very broadly in favor of public access. So if this should become an issue that a court would have to look at, it will be interpreted in favor of public access. When the Sunshine Law does apply, there are three basic requirements. The meeting has to be open to the public, noticed to the public, and minutes must be recorded. When we talk about meeting notice, the standard is reasonableness. This is not a certain number of days defined by statute. It's going to be dependent on the circumstances surrounding the meeting. It's intended that enough notice be given so that interested members of the public, interested members of the media can attend your meeting. The county does have an administrative regulation in place that requires notice be posted, agendas be posted 5 full business days prior to the meeting, so these meetings will be conducted according to that regulation. Meetings must be open to the public in a location easily accessible. Access cannot be restricted to the public. The facility has to be of adequate size to accommodate the anticipated number of attendees. And the county does have an administrative regulation requiring that county meetings take place in county buildings or other public facilities. Minutes have to be promptly recorded in writing and then made available to the public for inspection and copying. These don't have to be a verbatim transcript of what occurs. They just have to be a summary of events, a summary of the decisions and the motions and the votes that were made. Audio recording, while not a requirement of the Sunshine Law, is of course permitted. These meetings will all be recorded and video recorded by Orange TV. But if a different sort of Sunshine Law meeting, like the meetings between the co-chairs that have been happening, audio is not a requirement of that meeting, just minutes. There are violations for there are penalties for individual violations of the Sunshine Law. Any violation of the Sunshine Law, even if inadvertent, can be fined up to $500. A knowing violation is considered a criminal infraction, a second-degree misdemeanor, punishable by a fine. You can be removed from the committee. You can be imprisoned up to 60 days under the statute. Additionally, official acts of the committee taken in violation of the Sunshine Law can be voided by a court of law. So we don't want you to go through this whole process, make your recommendation, and then a Sunshine Law violation is alleged, and then the process is completely voided, has no legal effect. I caution you to just observe these requirements of the Sunshine Law. That is a worst-case scenario example, but that's what we're trying to avoid by always observing the requirements of the Sunshine Law. Moving on to public records, which goes hand in hand with the Sunshine Law. The Sunshine Law gives you access to governmental proceedings. The Public Records Law gives you access to government records. Every person has a right to inspect public records. You don't have to give a reason. You don't have to give your name. If it's a public record, anyone can ask for access to it for inspection or copying purposes. And a public record is one that is made or received in connection with the transaction of the official business of the public body. So this middle bullet point on this slide, that's basically your definition of a public record if you're wondering whether a particular document falls under the Public Records Act and must be disclosed. I would point you to this bullet point. There are exemptions in the Florida statutes for certain information that can be exempt from public records disclosure. The entire record doesn't become exempt because maybe there's a piece of information such as a social security number, a bank account number, an address or a phone number of a protected individual such as a judge or a police officer. Just the information that's specifically exempt would be redacted and the rest of the record would be produced. Exemptions are only in the statutes. We can't, at the county, make up our own exemptions. Judges can't make up exemptions. Only the Florida legislature can dictate what can be kept out of the public record. Public records are those that are prepared or created to perpetuate, communicate, or formalize knowledge related to the official agency business. This is kind of the other half of the definition. Do you have a record? If you're just taking notes alongside of your agenda and you're not sharing that, you're not using the notes to perpetuate or communicate that information to anyone else, your notes are probably not public records because they're just your own notes. But the minute you pass them to the co-chair and say, during a public meeting that's being conducted by the sunshine, under the sunshine, and you say, we need to discuss this. You've communicated your notes, your thoughts to another member of the committee. It could be communicated to a member of the public. Now your notes are a public record. So keep that in mind as well. Records are going to include all documents regardless of physical form. So if the document has only ever lived in your email or in your computer, it's never been printed, still can be a public record. Draft documents can be public records. There's no exception for unfinished business. Just because a document may not be your final thought, if you're making it and communicating it for purposes of conducting public business, it can still be a public record. And public records maintained on your personal devices can still be public records. So don't think that you can hold or create public records on your personal computer and they're not subject to inspection. It doesn't matter where the documents are, what account you use to create them. If it's a public record, it's a public record on your personal email as much as it is on a public email address. And with that, it's my understanding you will all eventually be assigned an Orange County email address. I would encourage you to use that email address for your redistricting business and not to commingle your personal or maybe your professional emails with your redistricting emails. In the event of a public records request, it's easier for the county to just, pull those emails that are responsive to the request. They sometimes use word searches, sometimes they'll pull everything. But if you are commingling your personal emails with your redistricting emails, there's an opportunity for your personal emails to either be open to inspection or to be accidentally pulled. So I would just encourage you to use this email address that you're being given for the course of your service on the committee. There are also violations, penalties for violating the public records law, similar to the Sunshine Law violations. Any violation inadvertent can be subject to a fine of $500. Knowing or intentional violations are first-degree misdemeanors, subject to removal from the committee or imprisonment up to 1 year. I want to go back and touch on something I inadvertently skipped over with the Sunshine Law. We're talking about meetings, conversations, discussions, deliberations. One-way communication is usually not a Sunshine Law violation. That being said, you're going to be receiving emails from staff. Maybe they go to the whole committee. Avoid reply to all, because then you're possibly communicating your thoughts back to other committee members. It becomes a discussion. A one-way distribution, like I said, is not normally a violation. I still caution you against doing that. A preferential practice would be to send whatever you want to disseminate to the committee to your staff representative and let them disseminate it to the entire committee. And then you just avoid this reply to all situation. So it was just something I meant to mention earlier. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Latour. I do have a follow-up question for you. With respect to Sunshine Law violations, can you talk a little bit about instances where someone could potentially facilitate communication between two committee
Sure.
members?
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, it's not just a direct communication member to member. If you have a conversation with your staff person and then the staff person communicates your thinking to another committee member, that person has been used as a conduit, and that's also a sunshine law violation. So you need to avoid that as well. Staff is pretty well trained to know not to communicate the thoughts of committee members to others, but also you can't say to your friend or your spouse, hey, go over and tell my fellow committee member that I think we should do A, B, and C. It's still a sunshine law violation because it's an indirect communication.
Thank you. And one more follow-up question. Can you talk a little bit about the use of social media and and public records and sunshine law implications there?
Yeah, there's sunshine law and public records implications with social media. If you are creating a public record, posting on your personal Facebook account, something that can be considered to be a public record, we discourage that because there's really no way to maintain those records. We have certain record retention requirements under Florida law that the county is required to maintain. Also, if we get a public records request, it's hard to accurately reply to or respond to those to produce the records that are being asked. If these public records are being created all over social media platforms, we would ask that your official records, any writings that you're creating with reference to your work on the committee be done and you're using your official email or some sort of other official communication outlet that staff can help accommodate. With regard to sunshine law, like I mentioned, you can commit violations of the sunshine law by communicating via social media, whether it's a response to a Twitter post or a Facebook post or some other platform that I may not have mentioned. If you are communicating with one another in any form or fashion and it's not at a public sunshine meeting, then it can be a sunshine law violation.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions for Ms. Latour? That means we're going to be perfect in oh, okay. Mr. Alfont.
Hi. Just one concern I have. We could, and we're not in violation, if we're in a public meeting, we can respond to questions of the public towards us. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely, because that meeting presumably is being conducted in the sunshine. So any discussion that's happening at this meeting, you feel free to communicate with one another here, but it should be on mic. Another thing that you should avoid is, the covering your mic and whispering to one another. I know sometimes, things have to be said, maybe the co-chairs, it's something, we need to take a break. That is not so much a sunshine law violation, but let's vote yay on the next motion is. So, the administrative things, not a sunshine law violation when you're like, we need to break in 5 minutes, because you're not going to vote on that. You're looking to avoid discussing things that are going to come before the committee for official action.
Madam Chair, let me follow up on Jimmy's question, because Jimmy, I think you were asking about responding to the public on comments, and I think we should make it clear, even in our daily lives, we can have conversations with the public on the process.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah, we can do that. We just can't have conversations with each other.
Oh, sure. And also, you can speak to the elected official that appointed you to this committee. You just can't speak to one another unless it's at a sunshine law meeting. You could speak to the public. You can speak to other elected officials. You can speak to other advisory board members in the county as long as they're not on this advisory board. Free to communicate with staff. Your restrictions are limited to these 15 members.
Thank you, Tico. I appreciate that.
Do we have any more questions for Ms. Latour? Hearing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So at this point, Camille and I have sat down a couple of times with staff, a full complement of staff, I might add, and trying to determine some rules of procedure for our committee. As we started looking at what we were going to be doing as a group, it seemed interesting just to try to get our arms around how are we going to do this, what's this process going to look like, what's the timing, how are we going to meet, and we sat down and drafted some recommended rules of procedure that we hope will all agree to this evening so that we can then move forward and plan our calendars appropriately. So what we did is just kind of set up a whole public comment process, how we're going to look at maps, our timing, when it's going to work, and then when our final meetings are, and when our final map suggestions are. These were distributed to you all Friday evening by email. Hopefully, most or all of you have gotten them, and you've had an opportunity to see them. I know some of you did not see them in your email, so I'm going to go through them fairly quickly, and then I will, at the end, make a motion to approve them. Then we can discuss them. If there are changes that need to be made, hopefully not many, we can certainly discuss those and then move forward. You were advised in the email Friday night, the cover letter, that there was one action that we were voting on tonight, and that would be these rules of procedure so that we can all go forward on the same page and know how it's going to work. So before I begin, did everyone, pretty much everyone got them in your email? You had a chance to look them over? Okay, this is mostly timing, blocking, and tackling, but we just want to get through them. So I'll go through them. Please feel free, if you have any questions, Camille will chair this piece. So just raise your hand, she'll recognize you, and we'll get to them from there. Again, I'll then make a motion, hopefully someone will second it, and then we can discuss and approve these. So the very beginning, obviously, our purpose is the purpose that is stated, to adjust our county boundaries in a fair, legal, transparent, and expeditious fashion. That's the goal. That's what we want to get done. As I said, our goal, as your co-chairs at least, is to have this done before the Christmas holidays, so that then staff can take them over the holidays and then we make our final presentation, which, by the way, is simply a recommendation to the commission. We don't have final say over this. We will make recommendations to the commission, and then they will look at everything and make the final determination on what we're doing. So the public comment portion, it's pretty straightforward. We've been through it already. The agenda for each meeting is going to include public comment. It's going to have to. People will be able to come and present their comments. There's language in there that says the committee co-chairs may reasonably limit the time of the comments. Right now, we are at 3 minutes, but if we see there's 50, 70, 100 people, we'll probably, between us, decide we'd like to go to 2 minutes on those comments. So we'll retain the flexibility. We're going to have many hours together as we go through this process, and if we can't start our meeting until 9 o'clock, it makes it very, very difficult for us to get our work done. So we're starting with 3 minutes. Tonight, obviously, it wasn't a challenge. Our speakers were wonderful, courteous, and very direct and complete. Hopefully, that'll be the case as we continue through the process. 2, public comment procedure. You just went through it. I don't think I need to explain public comment procedure to you. We just did it. Yeah, Julio.
Do we make a comment after the second, correct? Because I have a comment on that section.
Yeah, feel free.
All right, so if I may, for the public item, Article 2B, Section 1, for the co-chair, the Madam Co-Chair and you, sir, Co-Chair, to consider putting it at 3 minutes, even though it's being pulled from how the county works. This process only happens every 10 years, and I think that if somebody wants to give the time to a fellow constituent, it shouldn't be a limit to 1 minute on this topic. I think each individual should get 3 minutes.
I'll tell you what our thinking is on that, Julio, and then we'll take all the changes once we make an amendment. So keep that for once we make a motion. But if you'll keep that as a thought. But the thought process is let's use, for example, Ms. Maley from Orla Vista. If she had brought 10 of her friends and each of them gave her the 3 minutes, she would speak for a half an hour. So the idea is if you are speaking representing a group and you get your full 3 minutes, and then every member of that group can give you a minute. Again, we can make it 1.5, we can make it 2, we can make it 3. But if people come in groups of 10 and 12, then we're going to be hearing the same speaker for 30 and 40 minutes. And there's only so much that can be spoken about these different lines. So we thought that 1 minute per speaker would work. If you come with 10, you've got 13 minutes. That's plenty of time to convey the message. But that was our thinking on it. I'll move past it, but if you want to bring that up subsequently, once we get the motion on the floor, we'll absolutely take it up and talk about it.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Julio. Any other comments on that section? Okay, the section 2 there is electronic public comment. Again, it's basically what we do at the county. It's statutory. It gives you timing. It says you've got an email address. You can send it in. It'll be recognized and read. Any issues there? I presumed no issues there. I'm sorry. I will not presume as we move forward. Okay. Section C, reasonable limitations. This is the part that I spoke about at the beginning, which is to say if and when we think that there's going to be an inordinate amount of public comment, and out of respect for the committee time, Camille and I may endeavor to lower the time to 2.5 or 2 minutes per person, probably never less than 2 minutes per person, to get thoughts out there, but we've got to manage our clock and our process. So we've got the flexibility to do this in here. Believe me, it's not going to be done unless it needs to be done. All right. So one of the important pieces is under section C there, where we talk about what our speakers are going to have to tell us when they identify themselves. I mean, obviously, if they want to come up and not be transparent, that's certainly their choice. But if you look at C2, we would like our speakers to tell us if they speak for themselves or for another, if they represent an organization or represent a policy established by an organization. So if the Chamber of Commerce of wherever passed this or the homeowners association passed that, we'd like to know that they're representing them as a group. Whether or not they're being compensated, we'd like to know that just for transparency. And if they or their immediate family have any interest in what's going on other than our neighborhood would like to stay together. I mean, obviously that's an interest, but if they've got another interest, we'd like to know that as well. Further down that process, basically it just says what Camille or I or together we can do if someone is disrespectful or out of order or that sort of thing, just to clear the speaking dais. And that's that. So that's all of Article 2. Any other questions other than Julio's on Article 2?
Mr. Co-Chair.
I'm sorry?
Ms. Whittington?
A point of clarification, I may have misheard you, but on public comment procedure, section 2 there, electronic public comment, did you say that the public comment would be read or that it would be acknowledged? My understanding is that they would be acknowledged by name but not read.
Well, it says it'll be verbally acknowledged, the name of the person who submitted it, and then submitted to the meeting record for review and consideration by the committee. So to me, that means it's going to be read.
Staff is not going to be reading the body of public comments into the record. Staff will be reading the topic that's provided to staff through the public comment form that is live currently, and then it will also be reading the name of the person associated with that topic. Then the public records that were emailed will be sent to the committee members for their review, so the committee members can review them in their own time and also add it into the record.
Thank you. That's what I understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Co-Chair.
I just thought it would be beneficial to point out item G at the bottom of page 3 regarding court reporters.
Oh, true. Thank you. If there is a court reporter present at any of our meetings, which everyone is certainly welcome to do, but that court reporter will be required to give their name, identify the reporting company, and the individual or the entity who retained them to be there to take the court reporting. That's all.
Mr. Co-Chair? Mrs. Co-Chair?
Oh, Commissioner, sorry.
Yes, Madam Co-Chair, Mr. Co-Chair, will the committee itself be allowed to move to extend time if something is particularly germane? If we can say I guess it would be 8 votes in favor?
Do you mean a public comment?
Right, because I can imagine that something may come up during the 50 or so hours that we're going to meet where something would be particularly germane to our discussion that may not be able to be completed within 3 minutes or even 4 minutes. So would the board be able to move a motion and properly second and carry?
Yeah, Commissioner, what you'll see later on is we have the flexibility as co-chairs to extend time with a vote of, we agree, and then a vote of the board.
I think I was asking a different question. Could we as board members move a motion to do that?
If I presume if you think that's, nothing's going to stop you from doing that, Commissioner, if you think that's necessary, but I suspect that if you think it's necessary, most of the rest of us will too.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, is that addressed in our resolution? I think it is.
I believe that, based on the notes that I was provided by the committee co-chairs at our Sunshine meeting, that the co-chairs would be the ones to make the motion to extend. I see no reason why the co-chairs couldn't get that request from another member of the committee, however.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of courtesy going on. Yeah. We will certainly respect your request if you would want to make that motion.
Madam Co-Chair and Mr. Chair, if I may.
Julio.
Yes, sir.
I just have a quick clarification question. We're going to be running over Robert Rules of Order, correct? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else before I move to Article 3, the conduct of the meetings? Okay. 3A, after many conversations, our goal is for our meetings to run no more than 3.5 hours. We'd like to start at 6:30 and finish at 10 o'clock and get the work done. You'll see we've got guidelines on how to extend that if we need to extend that, but we're going to have 11 meetings with 3.5 hours with extraordinary technology to work with. We should be able to get our work done in that period of time. So that is our stated goal. And of course, you'll see it says the time can be extended on a motion supported by a majority of the committee members. So if we get to that 3.5 hours, if it's 10 o'clock and we're just not done, or we think we can go a little longer than a motion supported by the committee, but the presumption is going to be 3.5 hours for our meetings. 2, authority of the co-chairs. Basically says if one of us is not here, the other one has full authority as chair. 3, now this is where it gets interesting and you'll need to mark your calendars. Submitting sponsored maps. So we are only going to accept for consideration by this group maps that are sponsored by one of you. So the general public will have the ability to go online and work with the technology and create maps if they want, but they're going to have one of us as that map sponsor to present that map. So if it's not coming from you all, we're not going to hear it because there's a process in here to do it. So if any group or any member of the public wants to submit a map, there are 15 people up here who you can reach out to. Obviously, I would suggest you reach out to the appointee from the commission where you live, but if that's not acceptable, you could certainly forum shop and find someone to present your map if there's a reason for it. But we will not be accepting, because the general public can go in and play with the mapping process, we're not going to have 500 maps to look at. You all are going to be the screeners on that process, and if you agree to sponsor that map, then it'll get a full hearing and a full shake. Jimmy?
With that in mind, we can sponsor more than one map.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
People think, well, if I already sponsored one map, I can't sponsor any other.
No, but the key is there's a process, and as I go through this, and then as you train next week on how to use the mapping software, you will see how that all works. Julio?
For the record, Madam Chair, Mr. Co-Chair, Article 3, Conduct of Meetings Authority of the Co-Chairs. Are we going to be allowed, or the co-chairs of the committee, to vote via proxy? Because it's part of Robert Rules of Order. And with the environment that we live in, COVID and so forth, we may not be able to be here, but we'll be able to be, technology-wise. Are we going to be able to vote proxy as well or no?
So not by proxy, which is where you give your vote to someone else.
Correct.
But will we staff be prepared to do a Zoom-type scenario for committee members who are unavailable?
No, staff has not set up the process for any kind of digital or virtual participation in these meetings by committee members.
Okay. So it's going to have to be physical, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So moving through, I'm just going to read this language because it's fairly clear and it's easier than me trying to summarize it. I'm on Article 3C1. Committee members will submit maps they create or are sponsoring. And these are going to be sponsored maps in the manner provided by county staff. The current manner is attached in Exhibit C, and it's in your attachment. You can see it. It's very straightforward. Sponsored maps, and this will be important, shall be submitted no later than 11:59 p.m. 4 business days prior to the next scheduled committee meeting. The sponsored maps that are consistent with the rules will be submitted in a timely manner, will be placed on the next agenda, the one 4 days away, as an informational item, and will be forwarded to the county staff for staff and legal review and analysis, and then subjected to the county staff legal review will be placed on the agenda for the following meeting. So 4 days before a meeting, you submit the plan. It comes before us. We will administratively transfer it to staff for review. Staff will conduct its full legal review, compliance review. They tell us it meets legal standards or it doesn't meet legal standards at the subsequent meeting, and that's when we take up and consider it, and that's when you make your presentation on your map or your sponsored map. Is that fairly clear? There's a schedule under C2 of when you have to make your submission in order to be on the agenda for the informational hearing and then for the final hearing.
May I?
Please.
I just want to clarify for everyone, the reason why we did this portion of the process was to give us the opportunity to, A, make sure that every map that's submitted is taken through the proper process. And so while we are evaluating maps, it's important for us to have our legal staff evaluate the maps for legal sufficiency. And so when it's actually a discussion item for us, we are equipped with all adequate information needed to make an informed decision about whether or not that set of plans should be continued for consideration. So that's why you have an initial introduction, give staff an opportunity to review it, and then us as committee members the opportunity to review it, and then at the next meeting, that's where it's actually discussed. So the key is there's a process where it's brought to the table, evaluated, and then discussed instead of just rushed on at the same time. Mr. Hodge.
A quick question for the co-chairs. If the legal team decides that a map is deficient, will those deficiencies be enumerated, or is it just a no, this map is not acceptable?
It'll come to us and tell us that the map is not acceptable. But here's what's interesting in the process, and as you go through the mapping software, which you will love, most of the challenges, most of the legal issues will pop up and it won't let you submit a map.
Okay.
Now, there are some other legal reasons why it may not be acceptable, but the bulk of them will be weeded out through the process. But certainly we'll have a legal review of every one of them and we'll know the reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and if a map is marked not compliant, I will give the reason why, so it can be corrected, ideally.
Thank you.
Chico, but if a map is non-compliant, the board can still see the map.
We can certainly see the map, but we would likely not advance it for the next stage of review. If it's not compliant, it's not compliant. This is non-compliant with the law in general. Basically, the law is that we're going to have about an hour-long presentation on pretty soon on all the different laws we need to weed our way through. And if it's non-compliant with the law, we can certainly see it if we want to, but I doubt that we'll want to take it up and have any conversation about it.
Okay. Well, I'll see how it fleshes itself out.
Absolutely.
I think generally speaking, compactness or whatever some of the criteria they have are decisions that the committee looks at and makes a recommendation to. So I'd hate to have some map not be considered by the committee if someone believes it's not compact or whatever the basis is.
Yeah, and I'm pretty convinced, knowing the legal team, we've worked with them, these aren't going to be subjective reviews on whether or not it complies with the law.
Okay, thank you.
No, any subjective element will have a consideration, a suggestion that the committee consider a certain issue, but if it's subjective, that would be an opportunity for the committee to have that discussion.
Co-chairs.
Hold on one second. Two things. Number one, I would like to point out that the resolution that established this committee gives the county attorney the opportunity to deem any map set of plans legally sufficient or not. And this committee does not have any authority within that resolution to challenge that establishment. And that our goal through this process is to make sure that each map gets the same treatment. And so you will see that the work product that comes from the county's attorney's office to inform our review should be fairly consistent in form as we do the process.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, a question for legal. What's the appeal process for a person in the public or someone on this board that submits a map and then legal says it doesn't meet standards?
There is no appeal process in the establishing resolution. That said, The only reason why legal would declare a map not permitted is because it doesn't follow the 10%, the 10% maximum deviation requirement that's in the resolution that was established by the Board of County Commissioners. That would be probably the only way, because most of the maps you cannot submit if they're not contiguous into the system, so the contiguity is already going to be determined. There may be some considerations for the Voting Rights Act, but those would be considerations that legal would note. I don't imagine myself going to that level and making those kind of determinations, because that's more of a policy call. And so it's going to be more considerations unless there is a very, very blatant violation of one of the provisions and considerations.
Okay, thank you. So the reasons that legal would reject a map is a very narrow piece.
It would be exceptionally narrow for legal to actually just deem a map non-compliant. Now, however, the software will let you submit non-compliant maps in terms of that 10% maximum deviation, which I'll discuss a little bit further in the presentation at the end of this meeting. So that will be something that may come up because it will let you submit maps outside of that deviation.
Both of you, Virginia?
Thank you, co-chairs. Just a follow-up question for process. The maps will be submitted 4 days prior. If anything, what I'm reading here is that they may be revised by county staff? No? Okay, so under C1A, what is it that may be revised by county staff if deemed necessary for efficiency of process?
The process with which it may be submitted.
That's the process, speaking of the process itself, not the map.
Yes, yes, not the map.
Okay, so if the maps are deemed not efficient, do we have to wait until we get to the meeting to find out, or will there be some notification prior to that, within those 4 days?
That's a fair question.
I can give the courtesy to any of the committee members if there is going to be a map that I'm going to deem not sufficient to let you know before the meeting personally.
Great. That's a great question. Thank you. Kelly?
Thank you, coaches. I had 2 questions. So first, those, the sponsored maps that are submitted, and those people that are submitting public comment, does our redistricting website have some type of a feature where those people who would be submitting comments electronically could be reviewing these maps?
So the software that's going to be used, and you'll have more of an introduction on that software training actually on the 27th, the subsequent committee meeting, will have the ability for the public to see maps that have been shared in the system and to draw their own maps. In terms of the public actually being able to review and make their own maps, there's no feature in the public comment form for them to upload those maps, but those maps do have names associated with them with usernames, and that is how staff is pulling that information out of the system.
Okay, so, but my question was, so those maps that are sponsored, that the committee members would bring to the meetings, they're submitted 4 days prior. So will they be uploaded to the website so that those who would like to make a public comment, but perhaps cannot attend, would be able to see them and review them prior to the meeting that they'll be discussed?
Yes, staff is going to be submitting the public documentation, the background documentation for all of the meetings 2 days prior to the meetings at least. And so we're looking at the Thursday or Friday morning before the Monday meetings to try and give the members of the public enough time, which is one of the reasons why staff can't provide the analysis that quickly on the maps, because we want to make sure that the citizens are able to see the maps that are put on information and have their opportunity to talk there, and then also have their opportunity to talk once it's on discussion at the subsequent meeting.
Great. My second question is that sometimes we have, I hope that we all get the perfect map the first time, but it's unlikely. So does the committee have the ability to see the track change if there's a map that perhaps we thought wasn't good initially, but then later we say, oh, that wasn't so bad after all? Do we have the ability to track change so that we can adapt as we go along?
We did not talk about tracking changes in, I don't know that the technology can do that. Is our IT, Jason, do we have IT folks here who can answer that question?
Before we jump into that, I'd like to point out that the discussion portion of that should be a process whereby we are discussing, I like this map with the exception of these suggested changes, and that's something that we as a committee can evaluate and then, ask staff to, or somebody else can resubmit a new one, but a new plan reflecting those changes. But I do agree with you that that's going to be a work in progress, and as we'll hear shortly from our tech team, that's going to be something that they're going to have to help us navigate with the Maptitude service.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi there. So the application, the online application, will not track specific changes. What it will allow you to do, though, is it does track everything's kept on the server, so everything's secure. It tracks your changes as you go, but it won't call those out. So if you were to create a plan, save that plan, and start a new plan based on your existing plan, you would be able to have those plans in the system. So you'd have your original, and then you would have another, Plan A, Plan A1, Plan A2, all under your user account. So in that sense, you could track those changes. But the system itself won't present those to you as such. Is that clear?
No, that makes sense. And what my co-chair said is correct. The changes that will be made to those plans will be done at the public hearing, and by all of us, arguably, if we're changing those plans. Yep. Jimmy.
What I think what Kelly's thinking, and I'm thinking is not what exactly you're thinking. It's like, let's say I go home, and at 12 o'clock at night, I decide maybe I want to move this. I did some in my proposed map. I think what we're talking about is, can we change our own map when we realize that maybe we did something that we should have been more careful about? We threw the line in correctly. Are we going to have to create a whole new map? Well, it won't let me just make changes?
I think the system will create a whole new map for you, Jimmy.
Okay.
And then you can bring those amendments to the meeting where we're going to have the discussion, but it'll be a whole new map. Right? Anything else there? And you'll get more than your fill of this next week, I promise. I promise. It's endless. Okay. Let's move into map consideration process. So here's the current plan. Committee member presenting the map is going to have 5 minutes to present their map or the map that they sponsor. Should you have, if you're presenting a map that you are sponsoring for someone else, as opposed to your map, you can give any portion of those 5 minutes to that individual or that organization. Once a presentation is completed, after the 5 minutes presentation, county staff will provide their review of the map as to legal and what the numbers look like and that sort of thing. After that, we're going to have conversation on each map. We have limited that conversation to 15 minutes per map. That may be a lot of conversation on a lot of different maps, but at this point, we've limited it to 15 minutes per map. However, that conversation can be extended by a motion of the two of us with approval of the committee. So if we're at 15 minutes and it's interesting and everybody's engaged and involved, then we need to continue it. But if we're at 15 minutes and we've pretty much heard what we need to hear, we move on to the next map. So that's the concept. At the end of the conversation period, we can, at that point, by motion, vote to continue the map in our conversation dialogue. In other words, we'll parking lot it to look at it later, or reject a map. If we reject the map is rejected. If we continue the map, it remains alive as we look at other maps throughout the process in the weeks, so that when we come to the end, we'll have several maps to look at and compare that we've all said, yeah, this kind of meets it, and this may do the job, but there may be something better out there. So we keep the ones we think we might want to consider later. We reject the ones that we just don't want to have in the conversation process at the end of the day. Okay, and that's by a majority vote. And of course, I'm sorry, E says at any point in time, a committee member sponsoring a map or presenting their own map can withdraw that map. However, if somebody liked it, if Julio says, I'm withdrawing my map, and Jimmy says, no, I liked it, then he can bring it back up. So once it's submitted, it's submitted. Any questions on the process?
The only question I have, Mr. Chair and Madam Co-Chair, it's in the same item, and it goes back to the future also, on testimony. It says that if the co-chairs agree, I'm sure you guys are going to agree, but there might be one instance that you guys don't agree. What happens then? Because here it says co-chair agreement, but if there's no agreement, but the committee would like to move forward with something along those lines, what happens then?
You know, we haven't talked about that, Julio. We don't anticipate that to be an issue.
We have talked about that
Did
in
we?
our sunshine meeting. If we don't
Yeah, we
agree,
did.
we don't agree, and so there's nothing moving forward. We are co-chairs, and so that we have to work together, and if there's a disagreement between the two of us, then there's not a motion by the co-chairs, and so it doesn't move forward.
But the committee can make motions and second and discussion and move forward, though.
No.
I would. So the co-chairs drive the whole entire process?
Yes,
But
sir.
I thought you guys said that we were going to go on the Robert Rules of Order. And Robert Rules of Order, somebody makes a motion and a second, we discuss, and then we go to vote, regardless of where the chairs, co-chairs, or vice chairs stand. By Robert Rules of Order.
I'm going to allow the county attorney to respond.
There are several provisions in the establishing a resolution that actually requires joint motion of the co-chairs and does not give the committee the power to make those motions outside of the joint motion of the co-chairs. The intention of that was to help move these meetings forward quickly because we only have 11 in a short period of time. So in terms of where those provisions are in the establishing resolution, there's no flexibility for this committee, the committee to do that, even if it's under Robert Rules of Procedure.
But this is a draft, and at the end of the draft, it said we can change it. I'm just concerned that at some point, will we truncate the process because the co-chairs don't agree, and this is a committee? My understanding, and it is for the record, the chairs by Robert Rules of Order lead the meeting, lead the process, but don't truncate the process. And if we have a disagreement, there has been a possibility stated on the record that we may not move forward and just move on. And I think that will not be good for the public.
So there are two documents that the committee needs to look at. First is the establishing resolution approved by the Board of County Commissioners, which put these limits and gave the co-chairs these powers to make the joint resolutions over the authority of the rest of the members of this committee. So we have to follow what the Board of County Commissioners approved, and these procedures cannot conflict with what the Board of County Commissioners approved. So that is where we are in that process.
I guess, thank you. Madam Co-Chair, Mr. Co-Chair.
Hold on a second, we got a couple of people.
Well, I'm
And
not
I just would like to point out for everybody that we are apologizing in advance for our inability to get your comments on quickly. We have to kind of read the room and then track between the two of us. We don't have cue boxes that everybody can push. So while we are trying to be mindful, we want to just make sure the public is aware that we're not just looking at just, member Roca down there. We're looking at everybody and trying to be inclusive.
And it is hard to see
Yes.
people.
You got another one out there too.
Thank you. First off, thank you so much for the work you guys have done to put together these procedures. It's obvious that a lot of thought went into this. I'm looking at D1B, and where it says the only maps that the committee will consider are
Can you
those
speak up?
created through the software provided by the county staff.
I think more in the mic.
Is his mic on?
Did you guys give any thought to the idea that that limitation could act as a barrier to full access and participation by the public? I'm not saying it would, I'm just asking if it's something you guys considered.
We certainly talked about that, but the training session is a public meeting next week. Anyone can attend. It'll be on Orange TV. And the map is online and if you play around with it long enough, you'll figure it out, even if you're not trained. So I don't think it's a barrier to entry. We certainly talked about not wanting to accept maps with lines drawn on them, saying this is kind of what I want. So we've got to go through this process efficiently, and this tool is easy to use, it's accessible to any member of the public, and we were pretty comfortable with that.
And I just want to add that it's important to understand that, to Tico's point, we can't just draw on the maps. There is a process that's required by capturing census tracts and stuff we'll learn about. And so the utilization of the technology is intended to make sure that when the member of the public goes through the exercise of creating a map, that they're able to actually do so with some level of confidence that it is in fact legal, sufficient, and meets the requirements. But also, as the mayor mentioned, and it's also on our website, our staff, county staff, is willing to help people understand the programming. I think we've provided both a phone number and an email address in addition to the website, and our next meeting will actually have a full training session. So while it's technical and yes, it's challenging, the county has committed resources to help make sure that every member of the public has every opportunity to engage that process.
Question, Mark?
Following up Mr. Rocha, I wanted to make sure I understood what you said. So the committee members cannot motion the board individually, even if seconded, unless it's approved by the co-chair?
No, only in certain provisions. The resolution that created us has given the co-chair certain authority. So only a motion that requires consent of the both co-chairs. So resolutions about the map.
Well, I'm sorry, forgive me. Only a motion that what?
Only motions that require coming from the two co-chairs are the ones that if we don't agree, don't move forward. But if we're looking at a map and you say, I want to make this motion, we don't have to agree on that. We only have to agree on specific.
So we can still motion the committee?
Exactly.
And if it's seconded, we can still move forward?
Absolutely, unless it's something that requires our joint consent.
I understood, thank you.
Okay. Virginia.
Mr. Co-Chair, I know you're trying to look.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That gets back to the reason I asked the first question. I know our two co-chairs, they're great co-chairs. But suppose you do something we don't like, and we want to do something different. I know most of us have read the resolution, but I don't see where it says we can't follow Robert's Rules of Order and move a motion. It would take a high bar to overrule the chairs. It takes, 8 people to carry a motion here? So that's a high bar. So I didn't see anything in the resolution creating us that said that we couldn't move a motion and a properly second could carry and extend the conversation or accept a map or even overrule the co-chairs if we desired. Even on the Board of County Commissioners, commissioners can override Mayor Dimmons as much as we love him. But if we disagree with him, you get a right to overrule him. So I think not so much for us. We could deal with it, I think. But I'm just looking down the road. If we potentially get someone in the audience and they say, well, my representative wants this, but the co-chairs don't. Now, that may never come up, but I think that's something that legal should address. And I didn't see it in the resolution, and just like most of you, I've read it. So I would just ask legal to show us where that is in the resolution and what in the statute says we can't just follow Robert's Rules of Order, if that's indeed what we're going to do.
So the resolution has a few points where the request may only be initiated by joint motion brought back forth by the committee's co-chairs.
Okay, where?
So I would have to do the comparison between these, but it looks like in terms of meeting schedule, in terms of.
Wait, I'm sorry, but where? I'm looking at the resolution now.
As a point of information, the Exhibit A that's in our packet here is not the resolution that created this committee. So what is being referred to is not in front of us. Am I correct?
I don't believe it is, no. It is the resolution that established the advisory committee that was passed by the Board of County Commissioners back in August.
Yeah, and Commissioner Hartage, I think that's the problem. You're looking at the 2013 resolution, not the one that was established in this committee.
Okay, then I have another question. What can we get the one that tells us what to do?
You think?
We certainly can. In terms of where the joint co-chair requirements are, I can go through that right now. It's in meeting schedules, so the committee cannot add additional meetings to its schedule without it being initiated by joint motion brought forth by the committee's co-chairs. The co-chairs for the rules of procedure need to bring forth the rules of procedure. And that's it in here. So if there's a different kind of provision that the committee objects to, that would be, now would be the time to, in the rules of
Co-chairs, if I
procedure,
may.
now would be the time
Let me highlight that.
to note that.
Where's that coming from?
But also, the establishing resolution does say that we have to use the Robert's Rules of Procedure otherwise.
Julio?
Before we move to him, Commissioner Hardage, does that help you?
Yes, then that means that if we make a motion and we get a second, we can move an item except for these two items that she mentioned.
As explained and as
think that's
laid
fair.
out in the rules, right?
Yeah, and so that would be done by amendment to this document. And I would need to know what amendments would be approved by the committee once the discussion is over.
Now, the point is that that's really a great explanation, and it's easy to understand, but the item we were discussing before we got into this legalese was a little different from that. It was in terms of the power of the co-chairs, and we have great co-chairs, that's not the issue. But some of our public may want to do something different, and we were discussing their powers different from what you explained there.
So which actual provision are we looking at?
Mr. Co-Chair, you said that there was required, what was the issue that required just the vote of the two co-chairs?
Extension of time.
Extension of time when presenting a map.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, there are very few things in here that require joint motions. Most of them are time-related. This one is, each commissioner has 5 minutes. Or, I'm sorry, we have 15 minutes to discuss a map. By a joint motion of ours, we can extend those 15 minutes.
Makes sense.
It's not as if we're going to be killing motions. One second, Julio. I got, you don't have to keep your, I got you.
I just want to mention Article 5, Amendments A. These rules may be amended at any regular meeting of the committee by joint motion of the committee co-chairs approved by the majority of the vote committee. So if we want to change, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we want to change a rule, if the committee co-chairs don't have a joint motion, we won't move forward.
That is correct. If you want to
if I'm
change
incorrect-
these rules, once we adopt them, yes.
And that is also in the establishing resolution. That is one of the two places that the co-chairs need to bring forth the change.
So just for the record, since I read that we need to approve it and we can amend those rules, can we actually amend these things or no?
So you can make a suggested amendment for the co-chairs to consider.
And that is, I think, what we're discussing, that if we have a motion, a second, and a vote, we're trying to get away from co-chair agreement, even though we do have two great co-chairs. I know them for years, and I know Tico for years, so I know the grip. I'm just saying, on paper, it doesn't look too good.
Well,
Optics are key for this process.
This is one of those two places where the Board of County Commissioners establishing resolution requires joint motion by the co-chairs to bring forth an amendment or these policies and procedures to begin with.
Thank you.
So there's no wiggle room there.
Tom?
Thank you, Tico. Thank you, Ms. Evans. I haven't met you yet, but nice to see you. I guess the question I got is if it's a time period for items to discuss or not to discuss, curtail or not to curtail, and some of the board members seem to have expressed that they would like to have a majority vote also an option. Is that what we're talking about? I'm a bit confused. I'm a lawyer, and I'm a bit confused with legalese, I'm candid with you. And I'm not a bad lawyer either, you know. At least I don't think I am. But I was just thinking maybe something in Article 2, C. There's like C 1, 2, and 3 on page 2. Maybe put a page 4, notwithstanding anything above, upon a motion by the board. Deadline, majority vote of the board, they could extend some periods or whatever. I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out. But
Well, let's do this. Let's get through the complete presentation. Let's get it on the floor for discussion, and then take up whatever amendments you guys want to discuss. That makes sense? Commissioner?
Makes sense.
No, you raised your hand again?
No, I'm just
waving. Excuse me. All right, you made me move my pages. So we were on, right, we've gone through all of presentation of maps and sponsored maps. Page 6 public hearing is pretty much straightforward. We have to make a recommendation to the Board of County Commission after at least one public hearing. And depending upon how many maps we've advanced along the way, it may take more than one public hearing to do that. Yes, Kelly?
Thank you. I had a question. Well, I don't even have a question. I have a comment pertaining to the use of this map, the technology, which I think is great. However, it presents some problems in terms of socioeconomic challenges of some people not having the ability to participate in drawing a map simply because they may not even possess a computer within their home. And I know we're trying to do a transparent, fair process, and I don't see that this document or that the process is really recognizing those potential issues for all of the people that reside within Orange County.
I know that, as the mayor has indicated, staff will work with folks helping them make a map. I don't think we have access to computer technology here, but I know most of the community centers do in almost all of our neighborhoods around Orange County. So they certainly would have access through those community centers to that technology and the ability to do it, maybe not 24/7 like others, but certainly some access to it. Public library as well. So there's certainly access to the technology, and staff is willing to help and work through the process with them. And I think that's the best we can do. I mean, we can't accept maps that are just drawn, lines just drawn on a map now, that someone would have to go in behind them and try to get their intent and redoing and moving census blocks. And I think the technology has just passed that point. But hopefully we'll make certain they know, the public knows where public computers are, where they can get access, and again, where they can get online and do this and work with our staff to finalize a map. It's certainly a challenge. It'll be a little harder, but I think it can certainly be accomplished.
It is definitely a challenge, and I mean, even beyond socioeconomic status of lacking, having internet or having a computer, we also have a large elderly population, and not all of them are IT up to date, you know. So I mean, so when we say at the community centers, for example, like if we look at Bithlow and Christmas area, there isn't even public transportation to get them to a community center or a library.
Well, as a member of that elderly general public.
No, you're not.
Who is not tech savvy, I will tell you, the tech is not that difficult to work with. I don't know what we can do to solve those challenges here, but we can certainly take into consideration that fact and see if there's a way to, you know, perhaps at the public meetings that we hold in those communities, have some technology or something. I don't know what we can do, but it's certainly something worth taking a look at. I appreciate you raising it. Anything else there? Okay. On the public hearings, we will have at least one public hearing. If it takes two, it takes two. If it takes three, it takes three. At the end of the day, this will be where we go through whatever maps we have left. We sort, we weed, we choose, we recommend to the county commission. Our goal, and I think our job, is to recommend one map to the county commission. I think last time they recommended two. But I think if we're looking at this and saying this is what we want to do, here's the map we recommend, they can accept it, reject it, go back into our other work and pick and choose. But I think as a body, we're supposed to come together and say this is the best thing. So hopefully we'll be able to get to that goal. There's no time limit set at that public hearing. The 3.5-hour goal of our meetings is off the table at that point. If we have to adjourn it, if it gets too late at night, that's by joint motion from me and Camille and the committee. And the only requirement there is that we have a date, time, and certain for reconvening that meeting. Public comment will be, the opportunity for public comment has to be provided, obviously, at the public hearing, as well as public testimony on each and every one of the maps that come up. So we'll have public comment in general, and then when a map comes up, we'll take public testimony on each of those maps as well and hear what the public has to say on those. And obviously, all of us will be involved in that process. One person can speak on behalf of others, and Julio, this goes to what you were saying before. One person can speak on behalf of others. Under those circumstances, Co-chairs can grant additional time up to a total of 10 minutes during those public comments to be done. Everybody okay with the public hearing section? Okay. And amendments. Julio, you'll like this part. These rules, after we adopt them, hopefully tonight, can be amended at any regular meeting of the committee by joint motion of the two of us and a majority vote of the commissioners present. Present, not a majority vote of the commissioners. So, so it's not necessarily 8, it's a majority vote of the commissioners that are present, of the committee members who are present. Committee members can suggest amendments to the rules to us, and so long as they're presented in writing to the staff by the deadline 4 business days prior to the committee meeting. So we can get them out to everybody and have that conversation. And then amendments have to comply with the establishing resolution and obviously other laws of the state and local government. Okay. At this point, what I want to do is I'd like us to approve this. And if we need to make amendments or have conversations about some things, let's do that. But Madam Chair, I will move approval of this, but it will require a second.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Perez. Who was our second? Mr. Kilsheimer? All right, let's jump into discussion. Mr. Hodge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My biggest issue, and I've been raising this for several weeks to not have it addressed, is the near exclusivity of meetings on Monday evenings. I feel like, as Mayor Demings described, this is not an easy process, and this meeting schedule is sacrificing accessibility for expediency, and I would like to have the co-chairs ask the Neighborhood Services Division to please reevaluate their calendar to come up with something that is more inclusive for the people of Orange County. My idea would be to have them equally spread out if we're looking at 11 or 12 meetings of 3, 3, and 4, either on a Monday, Thursday, and Wednesday, or whatever is more accessible. But the point is, this schedule inhibits public participation, and I think that that is at the utmost of why we are here, and I would like to see that amended, please.
I'll take an opportunity to respond. I think that one of the thoughts processes, first of all, was having consistent meeting times actually allowed the public to plan, similar to how we know the Board of County Commissioners meet on Tuesdays, and other governmental entities have standard meetings on certain days. We've also attempted to address accessibility by making sure that we're having hearings in each district to facilitate people's being able to not have to come to the county administration building for every single meeting. And then lastly, I would say that scheduling isn't going to, in fact, be a challenge through this process. There's no way around that. And so, again, trying to establish a orderly process where, quite frankly, I think the other way around. If I'm a member of the public and I'm used to meetings being on Monday, knowing that, okay, it's Wednesday this week, Thursday this week, what have you, I think that actually makes it more challenging. But is there any other discussion on Mr. Perez?
Yeah, and I just want to point out, this will be on Orange TV. If they want to watch it, it will be on Orange TV, and they've got the accessibility, but.
If I may respond, I don't feel comfortable with someone that works on a Monday night being told that they have to sacrifice pay to attend one of our meetings.
They can submit comments electronically and or watch on Orange TV. I mean, we've got to have a process in place. The timing on map reviews, because we talked about this at length. The timing on map reviews, the timing on getting things to legal, the structure of this process depends on a consistent night with 4 days ahead of that for certain things. And it would be virtually impossible to run this moving meetings around Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
I respect that. However, we are not here to do what is most beneficial for us. We're here to work for the people of Orange County. And I would like us to please, if nothing else, take a poll of the board and see where we stand on this issue, please.
And prior to the board making that call, legal has a comment. The board does not have the authority to change the schedule that was given to the staff in the establishing resolution passed by the Board of County Commissioners. Staff is of course, if the board has comments on the schedule, willing to consider them, but right now, our agenda, to get an agenda out with the background information on a weekly basis makes it very challenging to not have it on a set day, because we have a situation where we're having a meeting and then 2 days later, we're needing to start putting that agenda together to get it to the next thing. So unfortunately, just based on the time constraints we have because of the census's delay in getting us this information by 5 months, we're kind of stuck in this situation. We will take into advisement what we can, but in terms of securing the venues and getting the meetings and the agendas and all the review done, it really needs to have that 7 days between meetings period. So when you start moving the days around, we lose that 7-day gap.
And I respect that. That's why I was asking for a polling of the opinion so that it could be taken under advisement.
Does anyone else feel strongly about Mr. Hodges' position?
Thank you. I can appreciate Mr. Hodges' position. Coming from the tourism and hospitality industry, I understand, and we have a lot of tourism and hospitality workers in Orange County. Their schedules are set where primarily, like if you're working Monday nights, it's a repetitive Monday night assignment. And most of those people are working paycheck to paycheck, as we know, and it's difficult for them to find a means to rearrange that schedule without losing those hours. So essentially, we would be asking them to lose hours. So I can appreciate the comment. I can also, Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, I can appreciate your comment too, where the consistency helps build public awareness as well. But I do foresee it being a problem for some of the sectors that are within Orange County. And those would be primarily those of the lower income populations.
Quick question. I'm not looking at the schedule, but is there at least one meeting on a weekend?
No, sir. And remember, we are also constrained by county staff availability as well and facilities as well. So all of our meetings are not here. Most of them are, but there are others out in the districts. And so, no, the schedule, if you look on page 4, there's where all of those meetings are. You were right there on that page, sir.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, but.
Mr.
I can
Arias?
appreciate the difficulty of people who perhaps have to work on a Monday night and having difficulty getting to meetings. However, I would propose that we consider that is overridden by the availability of information online and virtually at this point in time. I think we are in a situation where the reality is we have a very condensed time frame to accomplish something fairly enormous, and it requires this sort of scheduling. I would hope that the online availability of information and support would overcome that concern.
Mr. Arias?
I don't have a problem with the schedule. That's not why I raised my hand. But what Mr. Hodges brings to my mind is what I was asking about the motions. There's no motion in front of the committee, so we're discussing something.
There is a motion in front of the committee.
There's a motion and a second.
Yes.
But we need to go ahead and, are we discussing Mr. Perez, co-chair's motion, or are we discussing the amendment of Mr. Hodges? And
We are discussing the motion to approve the rules and procedures as presented. And as a part of discussion, Mr. Hodge raised an issue, and this discussion continues. There is no proffered amendment that has been moved or anything like that. We're just in the course of discussion. Does that clarify for you?
thank you. Yes, it does. So
Great.
at some point, we'll be taking a vote on Mr. Perez's motion. That's been seconded.
Correct. When we conclude the discussion.
Thank you.
I have a comment on something else. I don't know if we're going to take a vote on Mr. Hodges now, or we're going to table that to the end and vote altogether.
There was no motion. It was just an item of discussion. So.
Just, co-chairs, just one quick question. What prohibits us from having at least one weekend meeting? Is it just because we can't get there?
That would be for neighborhood services, not legal.
Just curious, what prohibits us from having at least one weekend meeting?
staff lead for this initiative. When we were drawing up the schedule, we tried to create a level of consistency, thinking, again, Monday nights, and realizing we had only a very limited time to work with. This was originally supposed to start in October, and going from October all the way to December, or early December, limiting meetings during the Thanksgiving holiday. And we were thinking, let's, again, with the consistency, we had 2 meetings in the admin building, and we're going to have 6 in the districts, and then concluding meetings. And it was deemed, let's keep the meetings, again, consistent, whether it be Monday nights, and that was the decision that was made, to keep them on a weeknight and keep them at a place in the admin building. We started to realize if we move to weekend meetings, that does, although it creates, has a level of, some people aren't working, it does create some operational, beyond staff, some additional operational issues with weekend meetings.
We have a comment from Ms. Whittington.
Madam Chair and Mr. Co-Chair, we do have one Thursday meeting that's on the schedule that is accessible, is here. And if there is a concern, I think that that might be something that we may be able to express to that portion of the constituency that, yes, that most of the meetings are on Monday, but we do have a Thursday night meeting on the schedule that may be able to accommodate those who wouldn't otherwise be able to come on Monday.
Mr. Arias? Oh.
And along those lines, it's pretty clear that the schedule has those dates set, so I'm sure somebody could plan for those dates if they wanted to.
Mr. Callahan?
Madam Chair, if we can move on to another topic, I had a question on based upon Jimmy's comments and Chico's comments on page 3, number E. It says, no person other than Sourd County staff shall be permitted to enter into any discussion, either directly or indirectly, with a member of a committee without the permission of the co-chair. So if you have that cocktail conversation that Jimmy was talking about outside the meeting and all that, this is fairly broad language that would seem to make that not appropriate. I don't know how we want to deal with that based upon the conversation between Jimmy and Tico earlier.
Just for clarification, I believe, and please, gentlemen, correct me, Mr. Affont was asking with respect to conversations with members of the public generally. The language in section CE relates to discussion among members of the committee and staff members, as in we will not be engaging in dialogue with the public during the public comment section.
So
right,
I'm sorry.
Or inviting public comment to chime in during the process of our discussion. Public comment will be limited to public comment.
Okay, so E on page 3 would be that during the course of any meeting, no person from the public can talk to a member during the course of a meeting.
And I have a question about that.
Mr. Affont?
And this is just curiosity, because this is the attorney in me. Sunshine law forbids me from discussing with you guys anything. But if I go outside and I'm in the little boy's room, part of the analogy, but that's the one that comes to mind, is somebody says something to me, yeah, the meeting is going on, but I'm not sure if this committee has the authority to tell other members of this committee that they cannot talk to somebody else.
And that's it's not what it's doing.
Okay,
What this is
just
saying-
for a point of clarification.
What this is saying is during public comment,
okay.
We're not going to go back and forth with a
Okay.
member of the public other than staff.
Okay.
There's not going to be an argument between a committee member and a member of the public. We will listen to their comment, we'll take their comment.
With that clarification, we're good. Because when they say during the meeting, it's kind of too broad. That's what I'm trying to get to.
And at your age, there'll be a lot of little boy trips. I understand that.
You got it.
However, Mr. Chairman, follow-up questions may be asked of someone making a public comment with the consent of joint chairs, correct? Say if someone's making a public comment, I need clarification through you, I could ask a question.
Just be recognized.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Ms. Simrod?
Thank you. I had 2 discussion items. First is on page 4, pertaining to the submission of sponsored maps. where it talks about generally, beginning with number 1. So we went through in a previous section and outlined how the public may provide comment. I know that all of us have jobs, or most of us do, and what I am concerned about is that there may be some dates where committee members may not be able to attend. And in the event that that would occur, I would like to see some form of an insertion regarding how committee members may provide feedback on sponsored maps, if in the event that they are not here. So what can we do? How can we facilitate them to still be involved and provide feedback?
Ms. Barrios, can you confirm, but wouldn't that be through the same electronic submission process, and so that way it's part of the public record?
So in terms of submitting public maps, submitting maps, which is what this section is about, you would just submit the map through using the form. But if you're talking about actually looking at the maps that are going to be on discussion at the next meeting, and whether or not there wants to be, like, you're not going to attend, but you want your comment heard, there would be no reason why you couldn't submit your comment 4 days prior to, so we could get it on the agenda with the background materials.
Okay, do we need to add that in writing where it would actually be formally read into the record instead of, like, for example, with the public comment, simply acknowledged?
That can certainly be added, yes.
Okay.
If the committee wants that to be added.
I'll second that amendment.
So just to be clear, what we're asking is an amendment that articulates the fact that a member of the committee has to provide public comment or their comment to staff 4 business days prior to a meeting?
I think that it would be if a committee member is not going to be able to attend a meeting before the committee, they will not be able to attend, they'll be absent. At that point, the committee member will have the ability to submit their comment on whichever maps are going to be discussed before the committee to staff, for staff to then review with the committee at that meetings that opinion is heard.
May I just ask for clarification? And I have no problem with the concept. We're getting, the deadline is 4 business days. So how do they provide comment on something that's at the same time that we have a simultaneous deadline for?
Because of the lag, the deadline for the discussion would have already passed. So because the deadline's for information, so it's for whatever on the discussion.
So after the introduction of it, it's on the second?
Yeah, it would be for the
I'm fine
discussion.
with that. Okay.
I'm sorry, I did not follow because I had the same question, is that there's a lag time, right? So I have to submit a map 4 days in advance to the meeting, right, to staff? But then if a committee member is not attending that meeting, I'm not following, because there is a simultaneous deadline, so.
No, well, because the committee member would only be discussing an item that would be on the discussion agenda, a map submitted 4 days ahead would not be on the discussion agenda, it would be on the informational agenda.
Okay,
So
I
you would be
understand.
making a comment on the discussion agenda, which would have already been published on the information the meeting before.
Okay, I understand. I'd like to make a motion then to add the verbiage to, oh, I never made the motion. I'm sorry. Did somebody else make the motion?
You made the motion, I seconded your motion.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's rather than wordsmithing that language, it's a concept I think that we understand and that legal understands, and she can make that change. Are you comfortable with that?
It'll be
Madam
in the
Co-Chair?
event of a committee member not being able to attend the meeting, they'll be able to submit 4 days in advance their comment on any map that is on the discussion agenda to be discussed at that meeting.
I'd like to, I am fine with that, Co-Chair Perez. I want to articulate for everybody the importance of this being a public forum. And so while we are creating this avenue, which honestly already exists via the public comment section, please be mindful that the establishing resolution has very clear standards around our participation and absence being a basis for you're no longer participating in this committee. So it is important to understand that all of us have challenging schedules, but just please note, this is not a in lieu of your active participation. it's just going to be mindful that you can run afoul of your service here that way.
Tom Callan.
Mr. Callan.
Madam Chairman, so there's discussion right now about a discussion item on the agenda, informational item on the agenda. So a sponsored plan goes just to the informational item of the agenda. How does a sponsored plan go to the discussion item of the agenda?
So first and foremost, it's submitted and it's included on our agenda as an informational item. At the subsequent meeting, it's included for as a discussion item, along with the staff analysis that we discussed earlier. So there's automatically a 1-2 step for every map that is submitted.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Roca.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, and Mr. Co-Chair. I just want to finish my thought from earlier so I can go on the record in this discussion. My concern to the optics of the process, having to limit the members of this committee to co-chair agreements on page 1A, item 2, on page 7, item F3, on page 7, item B.
All right, you got to slow down.
Yeah,
Chloe.
I
Come
heard
on
the
now.
first one. What's the
No,
second
it's only
one?
for the record. It's only for the record.
Excuse me. Point of order, real quick. We have a motion, an amendment on the floor that has been seconded. We need to dispose of that prior to addressing Mr. Rocha's concerns.
Thank you.
So are we going to vote on that then?
So I'll call the question.
No worries.
I'll call the question on the amendment, which was the language from Kelly.
Can we have it restated real quick just for everybody's edification?
Yes, my notes say in the event a committee member is unable to attend a meeting of the committee, they may submit 4 days prior to the committee meeting that they will not attend their comments on any item that is on the committee's discussion agenda.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, we just need to take a vote.
There's just one important detail is that somehow that information needs to be disseminated to the rest of the committee members for consideration. So if we could just include how that would be disseminated so that all of the committee members could hear that feedback.
Ms. Barrios, I thought that was going to, the timing of that submission was intended to make sure that it's included as part of
The agenda
package.
It'll be part of the agenda background information, so it'll be published prior to the meeting with all the agenda comments.
And read out loud in front of the whole committee?
No.
No.
So who would bring up that commentary then on behalf of the committee member that is absent?
That is up to the committee to determine.
If one of the members of the committee wants to read it out loud, they can certainly do that.
Mr. Chair and Co-Chair, if the comments are being submitted to staff, would staff not provide those comments to this body?
They're going to be included in the agenda packet. And that's
Right,
why I
but
don't
if someone
think-
is concerned, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
if someone is concerned with whether or not they're being read, wouldn't it be appropriate for staff to present that? Or
No, I don't think so, because we're not going to have, through this process, staff read every element of each agenda packet. That's part of our responsibility as committee members to do the due diligence of evaluating the agenda package.
If I may. So I think the concern here, and given the situation in the current environment, if someone, for example, has to go into quarantine and cannot attend a meeting, we're only asking that the members of this board or committee have their concerns vocalized for the record for the rest of this committee to consider. I do understand your concern. We don't want to go through everybody's public comment, but I think I would prefer deference to members of this committee if for some unforeseen reason they cannot be there, that their comments, if they felt it necessary to go through this step, be considered a part of the record.
Mr. Arias, you have a comment?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would recommend along those lines that the person who has to bring up that particular comment would be the chairs, wouldn't it? Of the committee member that's not able to be present. You said any committee member could bring it up. The only thing I'm suggesting is, I think the person that should bring it up would be one of the chairs.
No, I think that would be appropriate for the staff.
or staff. I'm okay with either one of them. But to have more guidance and more direction, it would be either staff or co-chair, not just any committee member. That was my only point.
And if it's staff, I would also want to know how long staff would be wanting to be reading for.
And I agree with you, because that's kind of the two things I'm hearing. Number one, we're telling the general public, we're going to receive your comment, but we're not going to read it into the record. But I'm telling you, Mr. or Mrs. Committee Member, you can submit electronic comment, and I will read it into the record. That to me is disparate treatment. And then also we have 15 minutes for reviewing information for each map and having our discussion. That's basically what our current plan is. And so if we put staff in a position to have to read the written submission of a committee member, we could quite easily run afoul of someone's written submission taking the majority of the time, as opposed to giving the rest of the body who is here an opportunity to be heard. Yes, do we have the ability to extend time? Absolutely. But I want us to make this as efficient as possible. So that's my thought process. Mr. Arias?
Wouldn't the same rules that apply if you were in person also apply, let's assume, digitally? So if staff had to read that particular comment from the public, they might be limited to 3 minutes, but a committee member would not be limited to 3 minutes because we are committee members. So I don't know if the analogous is, or the comparison is.
I think you missed one fundamental first step, was that I believe we said that electronically submitted comments from the public will not be read.
Correct.
That's true. You did say
And
that.
so that's, so I don't disagree with you. The thought process in the sunshine meetings that we had with staff to come up with a general time frame was 15 minutes would hopefully give everybody here a brief opportunity. I don't expect that each of us, and I think my co-chair would agree, would be in a position where we're going to want to provide a speech on every single map submitted. However, we want to make sure that there's enough time for voices to be heard. And quite frankly, my hope is that we have a lot of maps to review. And so if we're spending 35, 40 minutes on each map, we're going to be here until all hours of the night. And the same members of the public that we're seeking to enfranchise in this process, we're going to disenfranchise because they have to go home to their family. Who's next? Mr. Callen.
Madam Chair, timing issue. So there's a discussion item on an agenda. That presupposes I see an agenda, and I want to make a discussion item. So I guess I'll get the agenda 4 days prior to the meeting, so 7 days before the meeting, and then I have 3 days to make my comments if I'm not going to be at the meeting, or I'm trying to figure how this works out. Because if I got an agenda discussion item and I want to make a comment and I can't be there, then if that presupposes I get the agenda package within 4 business days before the meeting. I'm just curious how it's going to work.
Yeah, no, you're spot on with trying to figure this process out. Ms. Barrios, do you want to articulate?
I'm listening.
This process as we're creating it here is somewhat problematic. You will know which maps are generally going to be on the discussion item because they were on the last information item. So you'll be able to know that much. You won't have staff analysis until the Friday before the meeting. So the comment provided by the member of the committee will be not as informative because it won't have the staff comment, but they will have the information agenda. I do hesitate to create a system where we're encouraging or the committee members not to be present. So that is a concern because obviously being present is the best way to participate in this process. In terms of this information discussion, we could move that date, that date, but then the information will not end up in the agenda package because we would need that information at that time period.
If there's maybe a way to do this would be if we get an agenda package discussion item and we're out of town. And I've got one meeting I can't be here. I'll be out of the country. So if we have one comment we want to make, maybe the board member who's going to be out of town
has to email to staff 24 hours before the meeting, then they can forward it to the board members, or not forward it to board members, but staff has it and present it to the board at the meeting. But I do a 24-hour email of the comment after, because I assume we're going to get the agenda package 4 business days before the meeting.
Ms. Barrios, you want to speak to that?
My understanding from staff and from the internal agenda that agenda submittal schedule that we're trying to cram all of these different steps we need to do is that we're planning on getting the agenda on the Friday before the Monday meetings. Hopefully the Thursday, but the commitment is the Friday morning.
And I just also want to, I'll be with you one second. I just want to also remind everybody that the ability to submit electronic comments as a member of the public stands and remains, and we have a process here on how that becomes a part of the record. So while I am not opposed to coming up with a official mechanism for including committee member input in the agenda package, there is a mechanism for the public to receive that information. Mr. Hodge?
Just very quick points here. I think that the members of this committee, in deference to the other members, will make their comments succinct and as short and brief as possible so that we're respectful of each other's time. I also think that this is not something that's going to be utilized just on our whim because we can't be there. I think that we are taking this assignment seriously and have every intention of being here, but if something happens where we can't do it, this gives us an opportunity to voice our opinion. And my last point on this would be, let's take this for a spin and see what happens. If we don't like it, this body has the ability to amend this and remove it. But I think right now I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt to my fellow board members and allow them this opportunity. Thank you.
Mr. Hardage?
I'd like to call the question on the motion.
Ms. Barrios, will you repeat the motion so that everybody here is clear as to what we're voting on?
So currently the motion has either 24 hours or 4 business days in it. So
No, the
I'm not-
motion was 4 business
So
days.
the motion's going to be the 4 business days. So in the event a committee member cannot attend the subsequent committee meeting, that the committee member can submit the comment on any member that's under I have it in jumbled here, but just basically can comment on any discussion agenda item.
We called the question.
Commissioner Hardage.
Yes, so we're going to go ahead and vote. All in favor of accepting the amendments as submitted, say aye. Do you?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Is there any opposed?
Clarification, is that about that amendment?
Yes, not about the total motion.
Is there any opposed? Motion carries.
Well, I'm thrilled that our first vote was unanimous as a body.
Took an hour, but it's all right.
Yeah, we do have 42 slides of legal to get through before this evening is done. I'm just giving you a heads up. Maybe it's 62, I'm not sure.
It's 43, but.
43, yeah, it's a bunch.
43 substantive slides.
Substantive slides, thank you.
May I get mine in and get it out of the way?
I'm sorry, you said?
If I may make my recommendation so I can get mine out of the way, and then we move on with the slides.
Yeah, just go slow when you give us where the
Okay.
points are.
I'm only going to make one reference. I'm going to go off of Mr. Hodges' comments. He said that this committee has the power to make changes going forward, and that is not accurate. Article 5 amendments, item A. The rules may be amended at any regular meeting of the committee by joint motion of the committee co-chairs approved by the majority vote of the committee. I move to change this. These rules may be amended at any regular meeting by having a motion, a second, and a majority vote of the committee members present.
I believe that's preempted by the establishing resolution. Ms. Barrios?
That is one of the 2 things that is preempted by the establishing resolution. The other preemption is on scheduling meetings.
But I'm sorry, I'm reading. It says, these rules may be amended at any regular meeting of the committee by joint motion of the committee co-chairs. If there's no joint motion the committee co-chairs approve, we're not moving forward based on what I'm reading here. So I apologize if I'm misunderstanding, but clarify it for me.
The board passed a establishing resolution for the committee that has a limitation on rules of procedures that must be brought forth by a joint motion by the committee, the co-chair.
Correct. And this committee has the authority, I believe, to make the changes and approve them today as the majority of the vote decides, of the committee decides. Because that is what I read it somewhere here, that it says that we're going to vote on this and we can make the amendments that we like.
You can't make amendments that are inconsistent with the establishing resolution.
So the resolution on its own limits the other members of this committee to
On
what
the
the
policies and
co-chairs decide.
procedures and on scheduling additional meetings, yes.
No, I'm talking about on amendments of the rules.
Well, these rules in general are within the purview of the joint discretion of the co-chairs in the
Okay.
establishing resolution.
Not a problem.
Any other discussion?
Yes, I'd like to just go on record that I disagree with that as well.
Call
Any
the
other
question.
discussion?
Call the question.
I have a discussion item, sorry.
She was
I've
already.
been
and-
raising
and
my
I-
hand.
While I appreciate the ability to call the question, the challenge that we have as co-chairs is also that we don't have cues. And so as much as I want to be deferential, please know that we don't want to keep somebody from speaking. But go ahead, Ms. Semrani, then we'll call the question.
Thank you. To ensure the process of transparency, I would like to request that in the section, okay, so two things. In electronic public comment on page 2, number 2, under letter B, I'd like to make a motion to amend that time to, say, 12:59, so that the public is able to use their lunch hour to submit public record to the county.
That's PM.
That's PM.
midnight.
Oh, thank you. That was perfect. Okay, and then my other, I would like to just add, in the same, it's within the reasonable limitation. I would like to add that text services will be made available when possible. I don't want to tax the staff, with overtaxing them with this committee, but that text services will be made available at each of the community meetings for somebody who, in the event, doesn't have the ability to either, one, understand the IT with the maps, or two, doesn't have access to a computer, that there would be some form of text services available at the community meeting that would be in their district.
The staff can try and do what we have available to us, but we can only do what we have available to us. I do know that we have our GIS team, which will be responsive for answering questions, and I believe they're also considering office hours, but Jason can comment on that.
Good evening again. In response to your question, I would say the community meeting, by the time we get to a community meeting, might not be the best place to have the technical office hours. I would think that would need to happen prior to the meetings, when someone from the community who has an idea for a map and wants to draw one and needs assistance. I think the community meeting might be a little bit too late for them, and providing the opportunities which we would have office hours available to residents of the community. I think that's the solution, presumably the solution to what you're asking.
I hope that that's the solution. I'm just concerned that we're leaving out a really important chunk of our population, which is socioeconomic challenges, where people don't have access to this IT software. And I don't think that this document reflects an effort to incorporate those people's feedback.
But this document is the rules of procedure for the committee and how the committee will interact. It is not a rules of procedure on how staff will interact. Staff does have every intention of trying to make things available. We are going to be having a terminal, I believe, that we had discussed, available here for people to come in and try to draw maps on the computer here. There will be office hours by GIS to respond to any questions and to help any individual who's willing and wanting to draw a map, draw one.
Ms. Simrod, I must say that I share your concern to make sure that people are able to engage the system and make it work. The reason why I'm comfortable with our approach with Maptitude and what we're going to learn about it is because what I don't want is somebody to think they have engaged the process, come up with some maps, and they not even be adequate enough for consideration. So while I agree with you, this digital age does create real challenges for people of different socioeconomic abilities and access to technology. The best thing that we can do is facilitate through the county staff who has that expertise, access to some level of training and engagement. I would love, in a perfect world, for us to be able to go in every classroom and everybody's home and sit down and walk with them how to capture census tracts and go through the rules. But absent that being a viable option, which it's not, I think we have to balance what are we doing here? Are we giving people a meaningful opportunity to engage? And I think that's what our staff has endeavored to do. Ms. Barrios is correct that this is our rules and procedures, but the goal of in creating meaningful participation is where that's where I lie. It's the meaningfulness, because I don't want them to not have the ability to actually produce maps that are actually viable for consideration.
I hear you, and I completely understand. When we talk about redistricting and drawing different lines, it affects the funding that district gets. And when you don't have the people that would most often be receiving those funds actually participating within the process, it scares me, because we could, we could put people at a disadvantage even further than that they are unintentionally by simply not having those people being able to participate in this process.
Ms. Simmons, one of the things is that the county does not use our districts for division of funding. The census and the federal government uses the district numbers to give the county at large money based on our populations, but the commission districts do not have a bearing on whether or not East County will get more money than West County, because the Board of County Commissioners is who decides the budget and picks the programs based on that funding.
Right, but when applying for grants, it does. So like if a commissioner is applying for a grant, she or he would reference their district's data to provide implication that a population exists within that district.
I'm not aware of the commissioners applying for individual grants for their districts. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but typically we manage the county money through a county-wide grant process. So that would be a county-wide issue where we might target specific zip codes, but we typically do it by zip codes based on the zip codes, lower income status, or whatever is the grant is targeting. We will pick the specific zip codes throughout the county that meet that grant requirement.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I do want to push back a little bit, because I will say county staff and Camille and I have tried to do everything humanly possible to get engagement, from Orange TV to electronic participation to public hearings. Being out in the districts, in every district, the commission was adamant about that. So we are doing everything possible. Is it going to be perfect? No. Are there going to be people left out? Absolutely. But I don't think it's fair to characterize this as leaving out an entire population who can't participate. And I don't want the record to reflect that that's what we're doing, because we're absolutely bending over backwards to not do that. So I just want to be clear.
So, and I don't want the public record to reflect that either. I just want the committee to be sensitive to, the challenges that when we adopt IT, challenges that come with it.
Your question was called.
Yeah, I think we can move forward with calling the question. So the motion that's on the table was the adoption of the rules and procedures as amended by Ms. Simrod, yes. And at this time, we will hear if all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, we will rely on our county attorney to provide the amended rules of procedure. I encourage you as members of this committee, members of the public who are going to participate. We have established these rules of procedure for the purpose of trying to give everybody else, everybody here and in the entire county, the standard playbook for what this fair process is going to look like. So please avail yourself of this information. This will be on the redistricting website, as well as our establishing resolution to address any questions you may have there. I thank our committee for tackling our first big challenge. We now have 2 additional large and important portions of our meeting that I encourage you to stay for. I'd like to, off the script, ask my co-chair if he would like to allow people a 5-minute break.
I was about to ask my co-chair if I could have about 3 minutes of a break at this age. I need it. So I would suggest we take 5 minutes and then reconvene for Jason's program and then the legal presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.